Well, hey, welcome to the Light Reading Podcast. I'm Jeff Baumgartner, a senior editor at Light Reading.
Hi, and I'm Frank Copsodas, aka SuperFrank, and I am a lot of things, I guess. I have 4 full-time jobs, I say. I'm president and chairman of the board founder of the LPTV Broadcasters Association. I'm CEO of Intrigue TV. We own and operate 6 LPTV stations from Boston and New York to St. Louis and Tupelo, Mississippi, a place I love. You know, go have lunch with Elvis. What beats that?
Nothing I can think of. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the other side of the Grand Canyon for me is 5G broadcasting. So in that, we have the 5G Broadcast Collective, which we founded last year. And basically right now what it does, it puts out a bi-weekly newsletter that updates everything going on in the world in 5G broadcast. And then we have XGN, which I'm CEO of XGN, which is developing all the uses, technology. We're working on all parts of 5G broadcasting all around the world.
Okay. Well, 5G broadcasting is a big topic because we're speaking here in Las Vegas at the NAB Show, right? And you and I have talked a lot about 5G broadcasts over the last couple of years, right? And now that's part of the 3GPP standards. And we've talked about the benefits, but just kind of give us the quick elevator pitch on why you advocate for 5G broadcast.
Right. So 5G broadcast uses traditional over-the-air broadcasting and broadcasts directly into your smartphone. There's no need for a SIM card. There's no need for a plan. It goes straight into the SIM card, into the chip in your phone. Mm-hmm. The same way satellite is separate, cell is separate. I always say 5G is a marketing term more than anything else. And it's like Baskin Robbins. There are 31 flavors of 5G, each one different. So you have 5G satellite, 5G cell, 5G broadcast, 5G sidelink, 5G, and the list goes on.
Right. And you also get a tap into the 5G ecosystem, but talk a little bit about the apps and services that you can offer on 5G broadcast and others that may be on the horizon that maybe we're not focused on here yet.
The analogy I'm using this weekend to describe where we're at, we've been in elementary school until this year. So we've learned a lot in grammar school, let's say, of the different parts of 5G broadcast. Now we're like 13 years old. We're dangerous. We're starting to learn. We're starting to become adults. And now we're putting all those pieces together. And starting next year, you'll see deployment and rollout. And we're in high school. It's a couple of years till we're in college. But it's what's being developed. So right now, for example, 2 weeks ago, our team at XGN found 2 different ways to get a commercially released 5G optimized 5G broadcast optimized smartphone, it's a mouthful, to actually be able to use Android apps. So normally you take Android middleware for granted because Android builds it, but they haven't built the middleware for 5G broadcast yet. So that left us the chore of building it. So it took quite a while, but now we're able to develop apps for anything using 5G broadcast.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the phone side of it, the smartphone side, because that's where a lot of the focus is going to be on initially. So here at the show, you're doing a demo. You have is it a prototype phone, like a Qualcomm phone? What are you showing here? Yeah.
What we have here is what we've had for basically the last 2 years, which is a Qualcomm QRD, which is a development phone that has been adjusted to be able to receive the U.S. broadcast frequencies.
Okay. And what's the next step, right? I think when we were talking a little bit earlier, there's some talk about a commercially available 5G broadcast phone that's rugged, durable, for like a first responders thing, or maybe beyond that? Yeah.
Yes. So the first thing to understand, or that we have to address, are the frequency ranges. So band 108, which is 5G broadcasting as defined by 3GPP, is from 470 megahertz to 698. At 3GPP meeting in Madrid last December, we proposed splitting that into two subbands. 108 would remain, but two subbands. So we've proposed 470 to 608, which is US and India, and 606 to 698, which is basically Europe and most of the rest of the world. Because of T-Mobile buying the spectrum here a couple of years ago in the auction, that is referred to as band 71. So band 71's already tuned in, so to speak, on the European phones.
Okay.
Our frequencies are not opened up, which are in the 500 megahertz, are not opened up for the US on the chip. They're there, they're just not tuned in. So to tune in for the US, to make it work, there are two things you need. One, the frequencies opened up. They're already on the chip, they just need to be activated. The second thing is we need either EMBMS or FEMBMS, starting next year, opened up. Generally, all Qualcomm chips have it. A lot of MediaTek chips have it. The chip manufacturers do have it. Just needs to be licensed.
Okay, then what do you think about the roadmap then for just average everyday consumer phones that can support 5G broadcast? What does the future look like? What needs to happen to kind of get that in place outside of the supporting them in the chips in terms of broader adoption by the phone makers?
So it all starts with the chip. Without the right chip, you're sunk. So now the chips are there, and actually there are major developments in the chips that our only return path right now is through Wi-Fi on a smartphone. Starting next year, the new chips are going to be able to process both LTE and 5G NR simultaneously with one processor. What does that mean for us? You can receive on LTE and use the 5G NR as a return path. So you could use cell as a return path for 5G broadcasting. So going into what's happening with phones, right now you have Xiaomi, OnePlus, Motorola, Samsung doing QRD phones, basically development phones.
Like what we have here, yeah.
But they're all into it now. So for the Olympics last summer in Paris, Xiaomi had 250 phones out in the street to show. France is now showing those in pop-ups around the country. So it's on their radar. Apple just filed for some patents in 5G broadcast. This is the first movement we've seen out of Apple that's notoriously quiet about everything.
Right, and that I would seem would be extremely significant.
For the U.S., yes. For the rest of the world, not.
Yeah.
So 5G broadcast, the interesting part of it, it is the first worldwide broadcast standard. So why does your phone work in the U.S. and China and India, anywhere you go on this planet? Basically, a smartphone will work. Why? Because there's one standard set by 3GPP. Well, this is the first time for broadcasting we have one worldwide standard.
Yeah, and you've been obviously very supportive of 5G broadcast. Now, you did, I don't know if dabble's the right word, but you did do some ATSC 3.0 work, right? So, and I know that I don't think that's active anymore. So what happened there? And was it because of the opportunity you saw in 5G broadcast that made you shift gears, or was there something else?
It was something else. So as head of the LPTV Broadcasters Association, I feel that before I can say, yeah, go out and try this, I have to do it myself and get my hands dirty and see how it works. So we launched ATSC 3.0 on WCRN, my station in Boston, and we spent 17 months with two different manufacturers, reputable manufacturers, trying to get it going. By get it going, I mean a video signal as well as data. It should be able to do both. We were able to get one or the other, and not necessarily great quality on either one. So after spending 17 months at it and $60,000 of my own money, nobody paid for that except me, I went back to 1.0 and said, this is not going to work. We were trying to do some solutions for first responders. Nothing worked. So we decided to scrap it, and we got into 5G broadcast, and it was really early days. 2 years ago, there was really nothing going on. At NAB 2 years ago, people laughed at us like pipe dream. Last year, we had a booth and displayed it, and people are like, oh, this actually is a real thing. This year, it's a buzz. Right. So we have grown, and it works so easily. Deployment is so easy. I have 3 transmitters that are ready to go 5G broadcast in the US today. It would take me probably 2 hours to convert them from ATSC 1.0 to 5G broadcast.
Okay. Wow. So not super expensive, very fast. Okay. Well, the first time I really came across it was when I was talking to you about the trial in Boston, right? With, is it WWOO TV? Yes. Right. And this was, with XGN. And I haven't really talked to you since then about that trial. So what were some of the learnings? What did you accomplish out of that trial?
Sure. So shamelessly go to www.xgn.network, and there's a YouTube video that shows that whole demo. So the FCC wanted us to show 2 things, and only 2 things, is streaming video delivery and EAS alert going out. So in the streaming video delivery, we delivered to a smartphone in a 720p setup, and it came in clear. It's kind of anticlimactic, right? When you're standing there, well, here it is. Oh, yeah, it's a picture on a phone.
Yeah, it's like, we've never seen that before. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
But you're showing it on that technology. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we used an SDR to pick up for a 65-inch TV, and we actually switched the signal to 4K, and it came in beautifully. Right now, we can deliver a 720p signal on a smartphone using 300 kilobits of bandwidth using a TEM software.
Okay. Yeah, and a lot of what we're talking about right now is the smartphone. Obviously with ATSC 3.0, a lot of the concentration is on the TV, and then we'll see about smartphones, but it's the complete opposite right now for 5G broadcast. A lot of people still like to watch TV on a television. So what do you think is going to, what's your hope or your expectation on the television, right? We keep hearing rumors that, there might be a TV maker that, at CES next year might have 5G broadcast built in to show. But, what's your hope or expectations on that?
So I hear the same rumors about CES, except it's not only for 5G broadcast, it's for 5G chip. So you could do, for example, T-Mobile hotspots. Why can't you build that into the TV? Right? And that same chip can be opened up for 5G broadcast. So the funny part, last week, just through our website and contact us, we got an inquiry from a major television manufacturer saying, we don't understand 5G broadcast. Could you explain it to us?
Really, enlighten us.
Enlighten us.
Yeah.
And we have a car company, a major car company, that said exactly the same. We hear about it, but nobody can explain it easily. Can you help us?
Okay, so at least there's some
up.
Yeah, it's driving a conversation anyway. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, the other thing, like we're keeping an eye on 5G broadcasts, and we saw HC2 Broadcasting, largest low-power TV broadcaster in the U.S., has asked the FCC to
license.
Well, yeah, kind of change some rules a little bit so that 5G broadcast could be used as an option. And they have some interesting ideas about, well, maybe you just don't do, ATSC or do 1.0, maybe you can put everything on 5G broadcast as an idea. But I guess my question is, with that happening, how has that changed things for 5G broadcast? Is it just amplified the opportunities to talk about it, or has interest continue to gain momentum with, you talk about the TV manufacturer, for example?
Right. So we're thrilled that HC2 actually filed that.
Yeah.
That's for the U.S. I'm currently working with 7 other countries in launching this. So I look at it as a global effort as opposed to just U.S. For the U.S., HC2's filing definitely helped us. However, the one thing I disagree in their filing is get rid of a programming stream, because we are broadcasters.
Instead of just saying it's all data casting and
Right.
use it for whatever.
Now, in the pure form, we are data casters.
Yeah.
But just like your computer at home with an internet connection, you can get video, audio, or data. Well, it's the same thing through this, except so in that direction, they're right. Let's be data casting. But I think as broadcasters, we still have a responsibility to put down minimum one stream of programming, and also develop first responder solutions.
Okay. And a lot of what we talked about is on the low power side. I think there's a little bit of a debate we could say about, what can it apply to high power stations. Of course, the issue is that, at least in the U.S., a lot of the high power stations are very fixated on ATSC 3.0 and very invested. People like Preston Patton thinks that they should take a closer look at it. What's your view on it? Do you think, it's a great solution for low power? Do you see it do you view it as something that the high power TV stations should also look at, particularly here in the U.S.?
That's a twofold answer.
Okay.
In the U.S., questionable. Outside the U.S., depending on the country and the need. I would say in the U.S., it's more a low power thing. So if you go to Brazil, for example, they've launched TV3, which has aspects of ATSC 3.0 to go into their homes, but they are going to launch 5G broadcasts separately to go into smartphones. So they're actually going to do both. The best way, is to coexist.
Yeah.
And there's no reason they can't complement each other, especially in the U.S. So ATSC 3.0 makes a lot of sense for full power stations. And 5G broadcast makes a lot of sense for low power stations.
I see. But there's an opportunity there for some to do both. Is kind of the idea, like do a hybrid of both technologies or a combination. I don't know if that's the right way to think about it.
No, it isn't, because you can't combine them.
Okay.
It's one or the other on your transmitter, right? The interleaving, there are studies that show you can interleave. The problem is there's no room left from the overhead to actually deliver any content. It takes up all the bandwidth just for the overhead.
I see. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, and maybe you kind of already answered this, but we're already in April.
Mm-hmm.
So what then would you say are your top priorities for this year? You had mentioned a lot of activity internationally, but
right.
If you had to boil it down, what do you think what is it?
For the U.S., our priority at XGN are a couple solutions. One is to get the rugged smartphone, the commercially available. And by the way, we are 4G LTE standard. We are not in 5G. It is called 5G broadcasting by 3GPP, but we're actually 4G LTE based.
That's an important distinction, right?
Right. So our official name, I think, is 4G LTE 5G broadcasting.
Yeah, which is a mouthful and kind of confusing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's 4G, it's 5G, it's, it's all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
All sorts. So we want to get a smartphone on the market for first responders with solutions we have. Now that we have the Android part working in the middleware, we can put in apps for the first responder solutions. Number two, just last week, we figured out how to do LPTV BPS, broadcast positioning. So we're working on how do we integrate that into everything we're doing.
So is that like by that do you mean like kind of a global positioning system, or what does that mean exactly?
Yes, it's an alternative to GPS.
Oh, okay.
And ATSC 3.0 has been talking about it for broadcasting. We have figured out a way to do it in a much lighter overhead to just put out what it's supposed to do, which is BPS, positioning. That's it.
Okay, interesting. All right, well, last couple of things. Well, first thing, I want to talk about SuperFrank, the name, right? Because I know, you never get this question, right? Never, yeah. So the first time I got introduced to you was through Preston Patton, and he's like, "Oh, you got to talk to SuperFrank." I'm like, "Who?" I'm like, and I had to look it up. I'm like, "Oh, okay." But whenever I looked up like the origin of the name, there was a bio, and it was like quote unquote, it's a name that's shrouded in mystery, and
yes.
And there's some other responses where you're like, I'll never, not that I'll never tell, but I'll leave it as a mystery. So while I have you, what's today's answer? Can you illuminate on that?
Okay, my answer is I leave it to your imagination.
Okay.
The true story is just so boring that I don't tell it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you gotta keep the mystery alive.
Absolutely. It's much better to say leave it to your imagination, because your imagination could go wild. I like that.
Okay, I do too. All right. Now, also your background. You were you represented the legendary late James Brown,
yes.
Right? And obviously, I think a lot of people obviously know that about you, but. And a lot of us love James Brown. But what's a story about him that you can share that maybe not everybody knows about?
So when I first started working with him, the first show I was at Battery Park City in New York. And at the end of the show, I'm standing in the wings, and I hear my name being called from the stage. And his personal assistant, Mr. Bobbitt, was next to me. He said, he wants you out on the stage. I said, no. And he wouldn't stop. Mr. Brown kept saying, come out here. So finally I go out, and he gets me to dance and sing with him on the middle of the stage. And I'm like, oh boy, what just happened? I wasn't expecting this. We get off stage, and he said, we have a lot of work to do with you. I was like, great.
And you're like, okay, so this was throwing me into the fire, so thank you for that. Okay.
So we were years later at the Oxygen Festival in Ireland, and 100,000 people out in the audience. And at the end of Sex Machine, I had to sing and dance with him, or I'd get fined. And as he'd walk off stage, his hand would be out for the fine. He'd want me to pay. So at this particular show, he calls me out. I go to the center of the stage with him, and he turns to me and says, you finished the show. And he walked off stage and left me right in the middle of the stage in front of 100,000 people. Of course, the band, the singers, they're all cracking up, waiting to see what he's going to do to me, because he tried something kind of every night.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix of job security and trust. It sounded like he had a lot of both with him.
We had a good time. That's for sure. We had a really good time.
Well, hey, SuperFrank, it was great to catch up with you here at NAB, and look forward to staying in touch with you on your adventures moving forward, particularly with 5G broadcast.
Likewise, and if you want to stay up to date on 5G broadcasting, the 5G Broadcast Coalition has the bi-weekly newsletter of all the headline stories around the world, 5gbc.org. That's 5gbc.org. Just sign up for the newsletter.
All right, I'm going to do that myself. All right.
Excellent.
All right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.